I don't. Do you have any?
No.
Any to start with, at least. Now, nothing to start the
No
get the
opening
ball rolling.
remarks?
Yeah, no opening remarks.
No opening punches?
No,
Okay,
no.
well, I'll take a swing.
And you always do. You're always.
I would never take a swing. at a
There is
boxer
never
from
uncomfortable
Pittsburgh.
silence when you are here.
That's my job, to fill any vacuum of silence. Just ask my husband.
Oh, by the way, my wife Krista is here. Speaking of your
She's here to
husband,
answer any
here's my
questions
wife. She's like my human shield. If you guys get too rude, my wife is very defensive of me. She looks nice, but she's got a real mean streak. I'm gonna tell you, she couldn't be married to me without getting mean. I know the boss's job. I've seen it, and I don't want it. Just in the Hughes home. I'm just telling you, it's right over there. So Krista's there to protect me.
Okay, I'll ask a nice question then. What about gas tax? I saw that Representative Anderson's bill is out. I guess they're still working on refining the numbers in the bill, but the Senate has passed a 10-cent, or the Senate committee has passed a 10-cent a gallon increase. I know you want something more like a sales tax. There is a Senate bill being drafted to do that, but where are you as a body on that? Where are you on that? You still think something's going to happen?
I'm optimistic. It will require negotiations and coming together with the Senate, obviously. But in Representative Anderson's bill, Representative Anderson has been an incredible chair of transportation. He has spent not just in this session or this term, but in his past term, really going through the Transportation Regional Plan, which is kind of Utah's blueprint for what we need to do for transportation funding. And any decision that we make here in the Capitol has to be consistent with that regional plan, because that plan alone, there's a funding gap inherent to it. So you don't want to waste even more resources. Everything you do, you have to be consistent with that. And so Representative Anderson, knowing that as well as he does and working with his committee as closely as he does, being the sponsor of the transportation bill, which includes a gas tax formula, but also I believe there's a local option component in his bill. It's a comprehensive effort and probably represents some of the best thinking we've had here in the House about how we deal with our challenges in transportation.
When you talk about it requiring negotiation coming together with the Senate, do you think it's going to be a choice between the two options? Increase the existing tax or the sales tax option, or do you think that would be a hybrid at this point?
If you remember Senator Valentine's bill from last year, he had kind of a hybrid. He kind of tried to do both, put a bit of a percentage, having a unit tax. I'll tell you, just speaking as myself here, I am not a fan of this unit tax. I think this unit tax has failed us, and I think that some of the challenges we see in our budgets today are proof that the motor fuel tax that we have no longer does the job. And any recommitment to the unit tax, any adding more money by way of a tax increase to the unit tax, I think misses the point. And the point is that it doesn't pay for the repair and the expansion of the roads in the state of Utah, and we better find a formula that does a job better than this one. This is why the governor says there's $100 million of general fund money that could go to public education, but you have it earmarked for transportation, and he'd like to see that change. You can't change it until you understand why it's there. It's there because the motor fuel tax is not providing the revenue. And until you can't even get into a discussion about the earmarks of our general fund dollars for transportation until you have a funding formula that works. So I am hoping that we do not see a continuation or any trying to resuscitate this dinosaur of a unit tax.
Do you think it makes sense to keep the way Representative Anderson has bundled together his gas tax proposal and that local option, or as you get into it?
Look, it makes it it's a more aggressive bill because it has both of those efforts inside of it, and it makes it harder to get it over the finish line. But I understand why he's put that. I understand why he's looking at this in a comprehensive way. The challenges we have in transportation are not just limited to the state roads. There are challenges across the board. Multimodal transportation infrastructure is the only way that we're going to accommodate for the population and keep economy strong, hopefully promote cleaner air. There are so many components to multimodal transportation infrastructure, and you see that vision in Representative Anderson's bill. That said, the politics of it makes it a lot harder to pass and makes it a higher hill to climb.
What about the earmark? That's not in any of the legislation, removing the earmark. Would that be something that might be done separately once a gas tax goes through, or is that?
Yeah, I would look at that next year myself. It's looking at where we are in the session and what we would have to do to get the formula right. I think that would set us up nicely to visit some of the other issues in terms of how we fund transportation and do we need some of those earmarks once we get upstream and fix that formula. But right now, to even have that conversation, I think it's going to take a big political lift just to see through some of the things you read in Representative Anderson's bill.
And there's probably not enough
Time.
oxygen in the room for.
It's a lot. I mean, that's the problem you run into in politics. If you want to tackle every big and hard issue right now, you run the risk of getting nothing because you're fighting too many fronts. So you just if we could come up with a formula that works for our motor fuel tax, I would be very proud to see that done this year. And I think it's a very difficult task in front of us.
Speaking
I'd
of.
like to comment on that. I think that, as the speaker said, Representative Anderson's done a terrific amount of work on this, and he's really engaged in it. I personally think he's better suited if he split the two issues apart, the local sales tax and the system that we have to assess and collect and generate the gas tax. And I think the speaker's on the right track. We've got to have a formula that will allow us to construct and maintain our roads going forward, and that would be quite an accomplishment if we could do that. And then after you change that formula and get that done, then maybe you can look at any reallocation. So next Thursday, we're planning on devoting our majority caucus, to transportation funding. And we're going to have Representative Anderson present, we're going to have Representative Christopherson present, and Representative Lifford, and kind of get some sense perhaps of where our caucus is.
What's on the schedule for Tuesday?
Tuesday, we're going to talk about criminal justice reform and prison relocation.
You're mentioning the heavy political lifts. Senator Madsen has a bill for a medical marijuana program. We don't know the exact language yet, but it sounds like it's edibles, just nothing to be smoked. Any initial reactions to that? Is that something
Does
you'd
that
be
mean
open
brownies are
to?
okay?
Brownies are okay
Okay.
For medicinal purposes.
for medicinal purposes.
Is that healthy? Eating a brownie? I thought Krista doesn't want me to eat brownies. She gives me carb face. How's that medicinal? I don't get it. No, I'm just kidding. With all these lists we're talking about, the medicinal marijuana issue again it generates a lot of emotion. It's not one that I have focused on, or that our leadership team is focused on. So I don't have any opinion about that bill at this time.
Representative Dunningham?
Doesn't that violate federal law?
I believe it does.
Have to
Couple more questions.
think about that.
Any comment on the governor's scaling back on Healthy Utah, taking away all the tax increases and from 3 years to 2 years?
What?
You need to read my
We have to give
paper.
you credit. Thank you very much. Just towards the end of the
Yeah, we
time
went so
here,
long
instead
without
of
a
leading
question
up,
on
so
that
it's
topic.
Well, every
I was
time
so
I see
happy.
Representative Dunnigan, I think,
It's gonna be
okay,
branded
that's
forever,
over.
isn't it?
I can ask you about medication.
You can talk about marijuana if you
Yeah, I
want to
know.
talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, our governor's out of town. He's anyway. I don't want to. I think his calendar's public, so you have to look. But he's not in town right now. And but I think that there's going to be a meeting coming up very soon with myself and the governor and with the Senate president. And I think that given the work that we've done this week and the caucus meetings that we've held, there'll be perspective shared and new information shared in that. And we'll just have to see what happens when we get out of that meeting.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.